So we go from the craptacular season finale from Jungle Fury to holy sh**. Hi everyone and welcome to another Ranger Rant episode. Of course, everyone knows I'm Archer9234. Today I'll be talking about the pilot episode from Power Rangers RPM, The Road to Corinth. Now, The Road to Corinth actually is no adaptation to Super Sentai, even though there was a few little scenes from here and there from Go-onger, and at the end they do use the footage from episode 1 of Go-onger. This episode does not follow anything from the first episode of Go-onger. Now, before I begin, I want to talk about what was happening during the Jungle Fury hiatus and the RPM premiere. Now, originally, in all intensive purposes, Disney was intending to end the series from Jungle Fury. But conveniently enough, some of the promoters from foreign markets, they were starting to promote the Go-onger footage for the new Power Rangers season when Disney in the US originally was going to cancel PR from Jungle Fury. They had no intention to do one more season of PR at this point. The reason why this happened is because PR does a lot more better in foreign markets than actually domestically. While you guys in the UK and Europe and other places, you guys get season sets, especially Germany, which got the entire series on season sets. And in Europe, you guys got partial season sets for the Disney seasons and mostly DVD releases. Domestically, PR doesn't get any of that. So that's the reason why they jumped ahead and started promoting the new PR season before Disney had announced the cancellation. So Disney, fortunately enough, was forced into making this new season and final season originally. Now, at this point in time, Kalish finally had left PR. He was running the show since s.p.d. And so Disney hired a new executive producer, Eddie Gazillion. Now, he's the Nicholas Meyer for PR as what he did for Star Trek. Well, everyone knows Nicholas Meyer was a new executive producer who made Star Trek go from a TV show to a movie status, while Eddie did the exact same thing. Well, we went from Jungle Fury's crappy season to one of the best seasons for PR has ever done. Unfortunately, it had suffered from, low ratings because the show was on its last legs. Now, the reason why this season was so excellent in the way it was doing is because at this point, Disney was like, the series is going to be canceled, so really, we don't care, you can do whatever you want, and they're not going to promote it, so it didn't matter. So Eddie, while he was unfamiliar for Power Rangers and how they were, he did look at some videos and some past episodes and got the feel of the show. Keeping the basic aspects of the series. Be serious, be funny, use footage from the Japanese show, and do what you want. And he did for the most part, a wonderful job for the entire season. Unfortunately enough, Eddie, though, had his fair of problems and eventually had gotten fired from producing RPM. The reason why this happened was because he was going over budget and he was taking forever with scripts and unfortunately had to be fired because of that. So in his place, Judd Lin took over, which was perfectly fine. And it was overall, Eddie did a wonderful job for the season, and though I would have liked to see how he would have ended the series. Now let's begin with the episode. Now, the first thing I'm going to comment with is the actual opening theme song for RPM. This is really the only thing I really hate from RPM is the opening theme. There is no opening theme. It's just a bunch of few words, and it really has no memorable jingle at all. It's like the only thing I hate from this thing. Well, I do like Dr. K's opening monologue, which was kind of weird though, because we heard the opening monologue for the title sequence, and then we hear another opening monologue that gives us the backstory for what was going on. The first episode began basically how a virus had infected 39% of the world's computer systems, and we hear this opening monologue from, we'll find out from Dr. K. She was basically explaining the situation we get this little big backstory. Although I didn't like it though, that while we did see people throwing out computers and stuff, I guess because people can't simply hit restore on their computer in this universe. They were throwing out outdated PCs. Well, we were not seeing, modern PCs, at least up to 2001. We were seeing PCs that were from 95, 96, 97, 98. The opening also felt strikingly similar to the Terminator movies. Basically, a similar thing happened. The Skynet came online, blah, 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 took over computers and took over the planet. Similar thing happened. Vengeance virus took over the planet and started replicating its minions and was slowly taking over the planet in each city one at a time. This is where I kind of don't believe it, because it's because we have this one city that's the only surviving city. It's like, I understand it's PR and they're not going to go worldwide scale. The same thing happens in Super Sentai. Everything is localized in Japan and the world is really not really mattered, so we do the same exact thing. But it just felt really bizarre and awkward. It's like only this one city inside the United States, assumingly, was still surviving. So after a little bit of backstory, we finally get to see the new cast members. We were slowly introduced. The cool thing about this episode is that we're actually seeing war, flat out war. We haven't actually seen this kind of look to war in PR for quite a while, since the closest we've gotten since the Lost Galaxy premiere. We were flat out seeing war, the repercussions of war, and they were not shying away from death. We do get moments where we were getting reports of people dying, people getting killed from all the invasion forces from Vengex. So we get introduced to our first main character, Colonel Mason Truman. Now this is unique to Power Rangers because normally whenever we began a usual season, we're pretty much introduced to the main cast member, starting with the Red Ranger. But in RPM's case, we started with the extra characters first. Now Colonel Truman was basically shown as he's the main leader for this war and this rebellion and the main protector for the city of Corinth. Now the second introduction we got is Flynn, the future Blue Ranger of the team. We pretty much get what he is. He's an old-fashioned hero who pretty much doesn't care if he's going to die. He's going to save lives no matter what. Now, as the episode goes along, Mason Truman's forces are actually losing the fight, and they have to withdraw into the city of Corinth. Now, the city of Corinth was obviously built in order to be the last surviving place for humankind. Pretty much, it's the only last defense they have, so everyone has to be inside the dome, and they have to activate the defensive shields and close all the doors. So unfortunately, they only have a certain amount of time until they can get everyone who still survived the onslaught of Vengex minions and forces to get into the dome. Now, just before all the main doors were going to be closed, two people on a bike finally raced through, and we finally got introduced to our second and main leader of the RPM team, Summer and Scott. We don't really know about these main characters at this point because we're mainly focusing on what was going on into the main story. After a year has passed, we go to the outside of the Dome City, where we're inside the, I guess, a deserted area where Vengex has destroyed pretty much every location, and we're just seeing rubble and leftover stuff in the desert. While we get introduced to a new character, we're not sure who he is, but we do know that he is a person, and he does have emotions, of course, because even though he's looking for this city, it has pretty much no gas and very low water, he pretty much takes care of an old, a lone flower in the middle of the desert. This is also unique for a PR because we haven't had a vocal song since, I think, Ninja Storm. Because usually, for many years in the beginning, we always had many different vocal songs. But in the recent years, vocal songs were pretty much cut out. So we did get this little bit. Personally, I love the moment where this unknown character actually takes out the Vengex minions. We don't even have to even see how he took them out. He just took them out to show him that he was the really cool, badass character. And of course, we finally get introduced with the final new main cast member, Ziggy. Now, he's the main heart and soul of PR. Because PR, to its core, has to always be funny, dramatic, and corny at the exact same time, which Ziggy, of course, embodies. The first way we were introduced to Ziggy is that he tries to do an old-fashioned stick-up and steal this unknown character's car, which, ironically, he's trying to stick him up with an engine exhaust. But since this unknown character knew that he was simply, he wasn't the type who actually would kill him and would pose a threat to him, Ziggy introduces himself to this character while this character is trying to figure out where Corinth is. We do get a little bit of extra backstory with this character because we found out that he lost his memory. He has no idea who he is. We do know that he has a locket that sings a specific tune. We don't know really what relate to this is, and so we find out. We also get some backstory that Ziggy, of course, is from Corinth because he has an ID badge. He does know where it is, and we do know also the current conditions of the Vengex force. After a little bit, Ziggy directs to Corinth and where he is, and then he does suggest that you're not supposed to enter Corinth until the nighttime because Vengex forces are around, which I kind of find odd because obviously I know that the Vengex forces are trying to take down Corinth City, but when they were filming this push to get into Corinth City with Ziggy and his friend, it felt like more like the Vengex force was fighting for Corinth City because they were basically trying to prevent them to enter Corinth City. So while Ziggy and his friend are approaching Corinth City, the control tower was detecting, of course, there were two humanoids, or should I say, one humanoid and half of a humanoid. We're getting a little bit more of a future backstory to this character. Ziggy and his friend are trying to take out all the enemy forces and minions that are in front of Corinth City. He has several bombs, and they're blowing up all the minions and stuff. I kind of don't buy these bombs. They just look like weird metallic things, screws and bolts and stuff. It really didn't look like a bomb. I guess because they didn't want to spend a lot of money on the budget, they decided to go through a more simplistic thing. So while they're going and arguing, trying to get through the barrage of minions, Ziggy accidentally activates the bomb and he's trying to get it out of the car, where we finally hear Ziggy's new friend's name, Dylan, which at this point we don't know his real name, but he just chose his name at this point. The thing that I find weird though is how Dr. K at this point in time, being just a voice on a computer screen, let them in. I mean, she doesn't really know anything about these people. Maybe at this point she could probably scan Ziggy's ID card so he knew who he was, but at this point she didn't know that Dylan was half robot, half person. So it was kind of weird that she made Mason Truman open the doors, because I'm like, frankly, they could have been a spy. So when Mason Truman agrees with Dr. K and opens the main gate, they drive in just in time when their car engine dies. Now, of course, since the main gate is open and has no time to actually close, the Venjik forces actually invade Corinth. At this point, we're finally introduced to the main villains for the RPM series. We finally get to see what Venjik looks like. Unfortunately, he's just a big red light and a tube. I guess he's supposed to like slightly get the feeling of Zordon, because of course Zordon was famously in a tube, so we kind of get that feeling, but he's the main villain. I also like to point out that the main generals from Venjik's forces, their voices originally were much more deeper and darker. While they're the same actors who did portray the generals, later on in the season they try to make them a little bit more funny and goofier, I guess because they really didn't know what to do with them at this point, and they were trying to be the comic relief, but they had a little bit of a darker voices at this point. After about 18 minutes of build-up, we finally get introduced to the RPM's main core team. Flynn becomes the Blue Ranger, Scott is the Red Ranger, and Summer is the Yellow Ranger. I think this is the most that we haven't seen the main Rangers for nearly the entire episode. I think this is the most time we actually never seen them, because we were mainly focusing on Ziggy and Dylan at this point and all the other extra characters rather than the Rangers themselves. So this was another unique aspect of RPM. Now I want to also bring up a little continuity error that constantly cropped up throughout the season. The engine cells, of course, they're using the Japanese toys rather than the US toys. The engine cells on RPM would light up in some shots, while in other shots it was a solid thing where it had no light. In the close-up shots with the lights, they were using the BOJ toys, while they were using a different prop that was modeled off the BOJ toys rather than using the BOJ toys from the close-ups that didn't have it. So there's a continuity error throughout the season where even when Dylan and Ziggy become Rangers in later episodes, the issues was still coming up, and including with Jem and Gemma as the Gold and Silver Ranger team. So we finally see these newcomers morph and become the new Power Rangers, where Ziggy was like, yeah, the new Rangers, and then Dylan was like, what did you call them? You know, Rangers. And then Dylan really has no memory if he doesn't understand Power Rangers at this point, because they've been saving the planet for nearly, at this point, 16 years. So we get this great fight between the three Rangers while they're kicking butt and saving Ziggy and Dylan from, getting killed from the first monster and all the extra minions and stuff. In this episode, we do get a little bit of a different feature from the go-onger suits versus the RPM suits. In go-onger, the wheels that are on their gloves and on their boots, while in go-onger they function as a power-up rather than an attack, in RPM they function as a primary attack. Now, this was actually adapted later on in Go-Kaiger, where they actually do use the wheels as an attack. I guess nodding to PR as usual, because Go-Kaiger also likes to nod to PR every now and then. After the minion fight with all three Red Rangers, we finally get some footage from the first episode of Go-Onger, which is the main monster that was featured in this episode. Now, they don't actually give the monsters usually names. They usually just call them series whatever, and as each episode progresses, the series goes up and up and up, assuming improvements over the series in order to combat the Rangers. Now, the thing I particularly don't like inside this episode is the overuse of the tire sound effect. Well, nearly every other shot and close-up, we always got a weird tire effect. Because again, we're trying to make sure that they're cars. They're racing performance machines. They have to focus on cars. We kept hearing tire sound effects added to whenever they would spin, whenever they would do a tire move, it was a little bit too much, and it was kind of getting annoying. I'm glad as the series progressed, that aspect of the character slowly disappeared as we went along. Now, another unique aspect of RPM is that we ended on a unique cliffhanger. Usually past seasons would usually end on where the Rangers are, losing the fight and stuff and other dramatic elements. But in RPM's case, we ended the episode on the middle of a fight where there was really no dramatic tension, but it was just right there, dropped and and to be continued to the next episode, which was unique to this. Personally, overall, The Road to Corinth gets a 5 out of 5 from me. There was literally nothing wrong. We got great introductions to extra characters first. We got great introductions to the main cast. Even though we don't know anything at this point in time from the main cast, we got the basic gist of each of the 5 main characters. We also got a great backstory. There was a great production value for this episode. And the writing was amazing compared to what was going on in S.p.d. and Jungle Fury and Operation Overdrive in the past years. So there's really nothing to really complain about except for the opening theme song. What do you guys particularly think? Do you think that RPM was like blow out of this way, oh my god, amazing epic moment of PR? Or do you particularly hate it because it just didn't feel like a PR episode? I understand where certain people it didn't feel like PR because it's like we were going from this weird bad season to this amazing, dramatic, over-the-top seriousness with the funny stuff, but it just didn't feel like a PR episode. Thanks again for watching. I hope you guys like what I've said. Leave your suggestions below until what future episodes you would like me to rant on. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys right back here next week.